Imagine it's the 1970s. Imagine a train is rumbling over the tracks. Imagine it's running behind your house. That was commonplace for the everyday person, but it would soon go away. And then, somehow, many years later, miraculously come back. And when this happens, I think it's beautiful. The minds of a company that started with 5 men who wanted to do the best that they could in this profession did well. This is the timeline of the Downeast Scenic Railway. There are 3 things to take into effect when you're preserving a railway: preservation, education, and history. Now, you guys are gonna start out by asking me, how on earth is preservation involved here? Well, I'll tell ya. The Downeast Scenic Railway's line dates back to as early as 1884. The railway would start out with the main central owning what was called the Calais branch, and it served the people very well in those counties. Note that Calais and Ellsworth are 2 very different places in 2 very different counties, but more on that. It served them well for a good 100 years. Then, its people got started by a group called the Downeast Rail Heritage Preservation Society. Started out with 5 men in 2000. They decided that they wanted to preserve a line. They didn't know which line in Maine they wanted to preserve, but they knew they wanted to get it done. When the Maine DOT announced that they would get rid of the Calais branch and turn it all into ATV trails, it was a horrifying thing to them. But I'll put a pause on this and give a short, brief thing about ATV roads. I personally do not like ATV roads. When you're tearing up what is American history, I do not like that. I have ridden on ATV roads on an ATV. It just doesn't slap as much as running on a train does. It doesn't hit that soft spot. But back to their decision. They wanted to get the railway up and going. Many people said that it was so crazy it wouldn't even happen. But they decided to do it, and they had no time to lose. They presented their argument to the Maine DOT in 2005 and won. In 2006, they got a 25-year lease with them. Now that's pretty impressive since it's the early 2000s and it's pretty late for preservation. But they started work immediately. When they first started getting up and going, they had 2 coaches from the 2 coaches and a combine car from the Downeast Scenic Railway, and a flatbed. I cannot recall where the flatbed came from. And probably one of the most vital things, a GE 70-tonner switcher numbered 54. The railway would operate with these, and when they came to preserve the line, they were surprised to see that it was in such good shape. Again, if you find a railway this well preserved, please tell me. This railway, they decided to call this railway the Downeast Scenic. They started preserving parts of the line, and then they got several grants and a stone company in Pennsylvania to help out. It's like Tom Testa said, it seemed like we were in the right place at the right times in those early days, and I couldn't agree with him more. They were doing well. They bought all these materials in the early years from 2006. From 2006 to 2010, they worked on the line. In 2010, they gave their first run, with Downeast Scenic Railway 54 pulling it. A caboose pulling a consist of an open-air car, a coach, and a caboose. It should be noted that the open-air car was a flatbed that I was talking about earlier, and that's impressive. The caboose was bought sometime during this time. In the 2010 season, 1055 would be bought. And I know before I get yelled at, I know there's number 53. I sadly do not know where the heck she came from. I know she came from Minnesota. I just don't know when she came. But she did come. They would run with this fleet very faithfully for a good few years. Then, I would now like to talk about the route itself. The route consists of beautiful swamplands, a very diverse area, and a lot of nature as you can see it. I think it describes everything about Maine if you ride on this train. You not only get history, preservation, and education of the line, you get to see nature and its beauty. And I think that's very cool. My personal opinion of this line, underrated. Completely underrated. That's not trying to be offensive or rude to the rail fanners out there. I can understand. But it is sort of underrated. They put their heart into this, and there's a lot of beautiful things. They even have a Y track. I mean, come on. If you turn your engines around with a Y track, that's pretty impressive. I'm sorry, but that's impressive. I love this line, and it was one of the first I ever rode on. But, as I said, 3 years after 2010, I'm gonna say around 5 years after 2010, they operated they started operating two of my most favorite events in rail history, the Touch-A Train event and the pumpkin trains, which you can all ride on. I'll give a brief description about each. Touch-A Train Day is when people can go and basically take their kids so they can touch the locomotives, pull their horns, yada yada yada. I love this because you get to see history and be a part of it. Pumpkin Train is when they pull people to the pumpkin patch and they get to pick out pumpkins, they get to decorate them on the train. I know this is done in a lot of other railroads, but this is just a fun train, I'm sorry. But 2016 was a big year, and they had a fresh track ahead of them. 2016 would mark the year that they would get 470. I mean, if you have 470 coming in, that's a big deal. 470 is a steam engine. She is the last mainline express passenger engine from the main central left in the world. How cool is that? And they got this with help from the New England Steam Corporation. The Downeast Scenic knew that they had the largest steam engine in maritime Canada and New England. So, what were they gonna do about it? Well, they got 470 into Washington Junction Yard and just sort of left her out there so they could do work on her in pieces and then get a restoration tent. That's pretty cool. 470 would start to have restoration being done on her. So, what are they gonna do about this? They loved it, and 470 was a big event. Having a steam engine added to their fleet, a ton of diesels, and some coaches, they had the line. But that doesn't mean that I think 2016 is the best year. In my opinion, 2019 was the best year. I believe that this was the year that Downeast Scenic officially hit record numbers, and they had probably the largest Touch-A Train event yet. People could pull the horns of all the diesels like normal, but they could pull the whistle and ring the bell of 470, which was just finished earlier on. That is great. May I also mention that I have done that, and it's probably one of the best things I have ever done. But 470 and all of them would have fun at Touch-A Train. Touch-A Train was a big deal. So, with all highs, there is a low. In 2020, COVID came. Nothing much happened this year, except for the fact that they operated in the second half of their season. They said we waited out the July and June part of the season, but the courage it takes to operate during this time is pretty crazy. 2021 would go without a hitch, and as of 2022, I do not know what lies ahead. The railway would continue operating, and I hope for the best for them. This is Jack, signing off. Have a very great day, all you great rail fans, wherever you are. And have a wonderful Friday.